In the small town of Willow Creek, where the river bent lazily around maple-lined streets, lived a man named Elias Turner. At 68, Elias was a fixture in the community, known for his quiet demeanor and the worn leather satchel he carried everywhere. His hair, once a deep chestnut, was now a soft silver, and his eyes held the kind of warmth that made strangers feel like old friends. Elias had been a school teacher for 40 years, retiring only when his knees began to protest the long walks to Willow Creek Elementary. But retirement hadn't suited him. The days felt too long, the house too empty since his wife Clara passed 3 years prior. Clara had been the heartbeat of their home, her laughter filling the spaces where silence now lingered. Elias missed her fiercely, but he'd learned to carry that grief like a stone in his pocket, heavy but part of him. Every morning Elias walked to the town square, where the farmers' market buzzed on weekends, and the coffee shop, Brew and Bean, served as the unofficial hub for gossip and good company. He'd sit at his usual corner table, nursing a black coffee, his satchel resting by his feet. Inside it were sketchbooks filled with pencil drawings, portraits, landscapes, and studies of hands or birds perched on telephone wires. Drawing had been his solace since Clara's death, a way to capture the world's small beauties. But he never showed anyone his work. It felt too private, like sharing a piece of his heart. Across the square, near the old stone fountain, was a young woman named Mara. At 24, Mara was a stranger to Willow Creek, having arrived a month ago, with little more than a backpack and a guarded expression. Her clothes were clean but threadbare, and her dark hair was often pulled into a messy bun. She sat on a bench each day, a cardboard sign at her feet that read, "Anything helps." Most folks passed her by, their eyes sliding away as if she were part of the scenery. Some dropped coins or $1 into the tin cup beside her, but few stopped to speak. Mara didn't beg or call out. She just sat, her hands folded, her gaze fixed on the fountain's rippling water. Elias noticed her, on his walks. At first he'd been like the others, offering a nod or a small bill before moving on. But something about Mara's stillness drew him in. She wasn't just waiting for help. She was waiting for something else, something he couldn't name. One chilly October morning, with the leaves turning gold and crimson, Elias decided to do more than pass by. He approached her bench, his satchel slung over his shoulder, and cleared his throat. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, gesturing to the empty space beside her. Mara looked up, startled, her brown eyes wary. She studied him for a moment, taking in his neatly pressed sweater and the lines etched into his face. "It's a free bench," she said, her voice soft but edged with caution. Elias sat, leaving a respectful distance between them. He didn't speak right away, just watched the fountain with her. The silence wasn't awkward, but it was heavy, like the air before a storm. Finally, he said, "I'm Elias. I see you here most days. You new to Willow Creek?" Mara nodded, her fingers tightening around the strap of her backpack. "Been here a month, just passing through." Elias sensed the lie but didn't press. "It's a good town. People look out for each other mostly. You got a place to stay?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "I manage." He nodded, understanding more than she'd said. He'd seen enough in his years as a teacher to recognize someone running from something or toward it. "Well, if you ever need a warm meal, Brew and Bean does a mean potato soup. My treat anytime." Mara's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Thanks, I'll think about it." That was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Elias made a habit of stopping by Mara's bench. He didn't always sit, but he'd wave or share a quick word. Sometimes he brought her a coffee or a muffin from the shop, setting it beside her without making a fuss. Mara accepted the offerings with quiet thanks, her wariness softening bit by bit. She started to talk more, sharing small pieces of herself. She liked old jazz music, she said once, because it reminded her of her dad. Another time she admitted she'd always wanted to visit the ocean but had never made it further than a lake. Elias listened, never pushing, letting her words come when they were ready. One day, as the air grew sharp with the promise of winter, Elias noticed Mara shivering in her thin jacket. The temperature had dipped overnight, and her cheeks were flushed with cold. He didn't say anything, just walked to the second-hand store down the street and returned with a wool coat, navy blue and a little oversized but warm. He set it on the bench beside her. "Found this," he said simply. "Thought it might fit." Mara stared at the coat, then at him. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Elias said, smiling. "But I wanted to." She pulled the coat around her shoulders, her fingers brushing the soft wool. For the first time, she smiled. A real one, small but bright. "Thanks, Elias." That moment marked a shift. Mara began to seek him out, sometimes joining him at Brew and Bean instead of staying by the fountain. They'd sit together, sharing stories over coffee. Elias told her about teaching, about the kids who'd made him laugh or driven him up the wall. He spoke of Clara too, how she'd loved gardening and could name every flower in their yard. Mara listened, her eyes softening, and in return, she shared fragments of her own life. She'd grown up in a city far from Willow Creek, raised by a single dad who'd worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. He'd died 2 years ago, she said, and after that, things had unraveled. She didn't say what, but Elias saw the weight of it in her slumped shoulders. One afternoon, as they sat in the coffee shop, Mara noticed Elias's satchel open slightly, revealing a sketchbook. "You draw?" she asked, curious. Elias flushed, caught off guard. "A little, just a hobby." "Can I see?" He hesitated, then slid the sketchbook across the table. Mara flipped through it, her fingers careful. The pages were filled with delicate pencil sketches, children playing in the park, the willow trees by the river, a pair of hands holding a mug. "These are beautiful," she said, her voice hushed. "You're really good." Elias shrugged, embarrassed. "They're just for me, keeps my hands busy." Mara paused on a sketch of the fountain, her fountain, captured in soft lines and shadows. "This one's my favorite," she said. "It's like you saw what I see." Something in her tone made Elias look at her closely. "What do you see, Mara?" She traced the sketch with her fingertip. "A place to start over," she said quietly. Somewhere quiet where the world doesn't feel so heavy. Elias felt a pang in his chest. He recognized that longing, the need for a fresh beginning. He'd felt it after Clara's death when the house seemed to echo with her absence. "You can start over anywhere," he said, "even here." Mara didn't reply, but her eyes held his for a long moment. Winter settled over Willow Creek, blanketing the town in snow. Elias worried about Mara, who still hadn't said where she slept at night. He suspected she was staying in the old shelter by the edge of town, but she never confirmed it. One evening, as the coffee shop was closing, he made a decision. "Mara, I've got a spare room at my place," he said. "It's nothing fancy, but it's warm and there's a bed. You're welcome to it, no strings attached." Mara froze, her cup halfway to her lips. I can't take that from you. You're not taking, Elias said firmly. I'm offering. There's a difference. She looked away, her jaw tight. Why are you so kind to me? You don't even know me. Elias thought of Clara, who'd always left extra food on the porch for anyone who needed it. He thought of the kids he'd taught, the ones who'd needed a kind word more than a lesson plan. Because I can, he said simply. And because I think you're worth it. Mara's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. After a long pause, she nodded. Okay, just for a little while. The spare room became Mara's, though she insisted on helping with chores to earn her keep. She cooked surprisingly good pancakes, and Elias taught her how to make Clara's famous apple pie. The house felt alive again, filled with the clatter of dishes and quiet laughter. Mara started to open up more, sharing stories of her dad's jazz records and the time she'd tried to teach herself guitar. Elias in turn showed her more of his sketches, even letting her try her hand at drawing. She wasn't half bad, he told her, and her shy grin lit up the room. But Mara still carried a shadow. Elias saw it in the way she'd pause sometimes, staring out the window as if waiting for something to catch up with her. One night over a game of checkers, she finally told him the truth. After her dad's death, she'd fallen into a bad crowd, desperate for connection. She'd made mistakes, small thefts, nothing violent, but enough to land her in trouble. She'd left the city to escape that life, but the shame followed her. I don't know how to be someone else, she said, her voice breaking. Someone better. Elias leaned back, his hands folded. You don't have to be someone else, he said. You just have to be Mara, the one who loves jazz and notices the way the fountain catches the light. That's enough. Mara wiped her eyes, and for the first time she looked like she believed him. Spring came to Willow Creek, and with it a change. Mara got a job at Brew and Bean, thanks to Elias's quiet word with the owner. She started saving money, talking about maybe taking a community college course. Elias helped her study for the entrance exam, dusting off his old teacher's instincts. The townsfolk began to know her, not as the girl by the fountain, but as Mara, who made a mean latte and always had a kind word. One warm May evening, Mara came home with a small canvas she'd bought from the art store. I want to paint something, she said. For you. Elias was touched, but waved it off. You don't owe me anything. It's not about owing, she said, echoing his words from months ago. It's about giving. The painting took her weeks. She worked on it in secret, hiding it in her room. When she finally showed it to Elias, it was a portrait of him, sitting at his corner table in Brew and Bean, his satchel at his feet. The details were simple but precise. The curve of his smile, the way his hands rested on the table. In the background, faint but clear, was the fountain. I wanted to show you how I see you, Mara said, her voice steady. You're the person who made me believe I could start over. Elias's throat tightened. He didn't trust himself to speak, so he just hugged her, the way he used to hug his students when they'd done something brave. That summer, Mara moved into a small apartment above the coffee shop. She was still working, still studying, still painting. Elias visited often, bringing his sketchbooks to share. The town square felt different now, brighter somehow. The fountain still bubbled, the maples still swayed, but there was a new warmth to Willow Creek, a quiet promise that kindness could ripple outward, changing lives in ways no one could predict. And Elias, for the first time in years, felt like his heart was full again.